Hello HEMA friends and welcome to this new video. In the past video I touched the topic of training related to our HEMA fighting manuals. The topic which I will touch today may seem quite different from that one, as we will travel east to Japan. But as you will notice, in this video I will touch many of the same subjects in a way which will make them closely related. Now, if you are interested in martial arts and you haven't been living under a rock since a couple years, you have probably stumbled on a video of SEKI Sensei and Shogo while researching for your usual martial arts nerdy stuff on YouTube. I have already made a couple videos about SEKI Sensei, analyzing his sparring and answering to his longsword video, but today I want to do something more. I want to explain to you why SEKI Sensei and his Ryuwa actually are an extremely virtuous example of a traditional weapon-based fighting style from which we can learn a lot. Now, while watching SEKI Sensei channel, we may end up observing some katas of his Kenjutsu school, the Asayama Ichiden Ryu. If you went through the previous video, you will probably end up spotting all the various saved artifacts I listed there while watching these katas. A smart use of distance, of control, and of freedom are all there to achieve good and safe training while using nothing more than a simple wooden sword while training techniques. Now, these artifacts are beneficial to safety but may also be detrimental to learning. In fact, if the actions trained during the various katas get to be considered by the trainee as 100% real fighting techniques at every single time, the learning process of a student may be greatly compromised. As katas tend to be on average an agglomerate of useful skills and techniques to learn, but not necessarily always placed at the correct distances and timings due to the aforementioned safety artifacts. This is because of a simple reason. Training a fighting art, which by logic has to bring to contact during its realistic combat execution, with training methods which instead avoid contact for the sake of safety, is something quite complex. It requires a lot of awareness about why a kata had been made in a certain way to grasp its meaning and use, and SEKI Sensei seems to be an extremely virtuous example in these regards.
To master the correct maki technique, this kata intentionally includes winding the sword twice. In a real combat situation, winding twice would be impractical. After the wind, you finally attack back.
Here Shogo, while describing a kata, explains to the viewer how this specific kata intentionally applies the maki technique twice, with the goal to master the technique, adding that applying it in this way in combat will be impractical. And as you probably know, Shogo, besides being a far better video maker than me, is also a student of SEKI Sensei. This means that SEKI Sensei is eager to explain to his students why a kata has to be performed in a specific way, which is crucial to properly learn something useful out of it while training it. SEKI Sensei is also quite pragmatic while talking about the application in combat of certain techniques, basing his experience on historical records.
つばぜり合いっていうのはね、ならない方がいいんです。日本のね、昔の歴史で幕末とかいろんな切り合いの歴史がありますけど、大抵指がたくさん起こってるそうでね、簡単にポロポロっと取れちゃうんですよね。だからやらない方がいいっていう。
Or on his technical and tactical experience.
いきなりね、大きい動作から入っちゃうんですね。これ現実にはありえない。まずはね、小さい手の作用で剣に負担かけたりね、あるいはつば越しに小手を狙いに行くとか言ってパンパンと入っていくのが通常なんですね。
This makes him able to easily relate to other styles and practice methods.
Although the longsword user is very experienced with using the kaiken technique, SEKI Sensei noticed something.
ただね、この使い方っていうのはね、本来もっと近間じゃないとダメなんですよ。だからある程度 距離があるところからこう使った結果、直線的な日本の剣が入っちゃったんです。
If you use the Kaigen technique when you're too far away from an opponent, you'll just be exposing your arm to the opponent. So it's not a technique, at least from a Kenjutsu point of view, that you can use in any situation. But there was something that SEKI SENSEI said throughout the whole video.
ただ個人的にはね、こちらの人の使い方好きですよ。上手ですよ。
Now, as in HEMA we tend to know well, some sort of sparring experience is crucial to properly relate a technique to the chaos of fighting. And again, in this regard, SEKI Sensei is a virtuous example. His traditional fighting approach with the Fukuro Shinai is not only fitting his traditional context in a traditional and thus historical way, but it also gives enough degrees of freedom to both experience and exert violence in a controlled environment, which makes for a fast development of tactics related to the trained techniques. SEKI Sensei is also fifth dan in Kendo, and this makes his view of fighting in relation to the various contexts of application even more nuanced, as we can see here during one of his video commentaries.
市内の世界で剣道の動きでパンパンってやるでしょ。切るってのはどうしてもね、遅れるんですよ。だから合わせに行っちゃったっていう、勝つために。
All these aspects together are crucial to build up a healthy and virtuous martial arts environment, in my humble opinion. SEKI Sensei and his Ryua are, for us, HEMA researchers, a very useful source of study, as we lack the greatest part of the knowledge related to how the practice was carried out back in the days. And while it is possible to observe many other traditional Kenjutsu styles around, not a lot of them are eager to have so much media exposure, while at the same time being a Koryu with hundreds of years of history and a style which put itself under constant pressure testing, in a traditional way, by the way, which makes everything even more interesting. Of course, the tradition and tools are different, and so we can't simply import everything as it is. But given the fact that the safety artifacts are the same, we simply have to spot where and when they were applied, and which materials and tools were used. This, of course, if we want to know more about the past ways of training, thus learning more about how our art was practiced and therefore consequently applied in combat. One last concept while working with a traditional approach is useful to be aware of, and this is the fact that a traditional method is always a compromise between tradition, culture, history, and efficiency.
I actually had one more very important question I wanted to ask SEKI Sensei. Katana tends to be overrated, but isn't it actually weak in a real battle because it's easily damaged?
間違いではないんでしょうね。ただそこはね、やっぱね、刀にこだわるっていうのはね、日本人ですから。
なるほど。そこはもう誇りと言いますか。
最後は刀ですっていうのが侍だったと思うんです。
The pride of practicing a traditional style has to be found in this, and not in a supposed superiority over other methods, a concept which I heard expressed far too many times in certain martial arts environments. Very good people, I hope you found this video interesting in some ways. I take the occasion to express my respect for SEKI Sensei and his craft, and to Shogo, which made for the possibility to enjoy it on YouTube. As always, remember to check my Patreon if you want to support me and the channel. Thanks for watching as always, and see you next time.